is challenges around payment. How are we going to get out into the field? And one of the reasons why I am here is to try to shorten that cycle, to create those dynamic connections between the new one of the new GTLDs, the new GTLD community, and you. But I think on some fundamental level, one of the things that I looked at when I looked at a lot of the names that were coming through, and when we're talking about some of the CCTLDs, is a fundamental of returning to the basics. What is your brand? What is your value add? What is your community? We're very excited about the .ngo community, in part because I think it is a real community, and because it has a real great footprint here in Africa and here in East Africa. But if you look at a lot of the groups that we're seeing coming onto the web, there isn't a real obvious answer to these questions. What is your brand? What is your value add? What is your community? And so what our panel is going to take a look at, I hope, is a chance to say, well, how might we do this to create more value, to create more visibility, to create more excitement? And what are the things that we have tried that we think make sense? What are the things that we have tried that we think maybe in retrospect don't make sense? And how can we engage you more? And that's where we're hoping that you'll jump in and give us your thoughts. How can we engage you more? We recognize that in this room there's tremendous power. And on the continent there's tremendous market power. But that hasn't yet translated necessarily into the opportunities either for the sellers or for the communities that are picking up these new domains. So what can we do to get more domains in a meaningful way in the hands of more people? So without further delay, that's a little bit of background from my side. I'm going to turn it over to Clifford on my right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrew. Hello, everyone. My name is Clifford de Souza. I'm a part of the business development team at Logic Boxes. Very interesting points made by Andrew here about the existing state of industry and what it used to be, say, a couple of years ago. When it comes to the law of supply and demand, we had 24 existing GTLDs and CCTLDs at that point in time. Right now, we have more than 1,000. But the same number of providers, the same number of service providers who are basically facilitating the domain name sales. Now, here we are to talk about marketing strategies in this new era of new GTLDs, and how exactly can registries basically go out and reach out to your target audience, to your end customer, right? I'd like to make a few points, and then we can basically talk about it. My fellow panelists can also talk about the same. The most important part when it comes to market your TLD is to spread awareness. If your end customer does not know your TLD is out there, he would never buy it. Now, spreading awareness is fine, but how do you spread awareness? First and foremost, I think Mohammed from QL made that point earlier, is to have relevant website and content. So you have a basic website, you have content on it which basically preaches about your specific TLD and what it means. Which specific community does that TLD apply to? You need to have marketing collaterals in place. Marketing collaterals would be in support to marketing campaigns that you would run. As Andrew mentioned, you need to pump in those marketing dollars to basically get eyeballs onto your specific TLD. So marketing collaterals that would basically be passed on to various websites, to blogs, which will actually talk about your CCTLD. Another very important part in terms of spreading awareness is having a proper channel in place. Now, you will have a registrar channel, of course. You'll have a lot of registrars who will carry your TLD and pass it on to the end customer. But at the same time, how many of these registrars are local registrars who have the maximum reach to your end customer? Now, say, for example, a country in Africa, who would be the most likeliest of organizations to reach out to your end customers? It will be, say, for example, universities. It would be telecom companies who have a grab on these customers already because they have a huge target audience already in place. So you need to partner with these guys. I'm not saying that not partner with the major registrars. Of course, partner with the major registrars, but also tap into the potential that is out there which is partnering with these small organizations, telephone companies, universities, who will basically reach out to your end customer very well. So that's about spreading awareness. Now, what would increase the chances of your customer to come to your website and buy something? You have the content in place, you have marketing collaterals in place. Now, once he lands on your website, once he lands on your storefront, what would appeal to him the most? Something that will appeal to me is if I have all of my shopping needs at one place. Every single TLD registry out there right now is selling domain names, but how many registries are also selling other products and services along with a specific TLD? 5%, 10% maybe? So here's a chance for you to provide your customers with a complete end-to-end portfolio of services. You basically give them hosting, you give them a site builder. It's like a one-stop shop. You go to a mall, you buy everything from the mall, and then you come out. You do not have to go to different malls to buy different services. This makes sure that a customer stays with you for a longer time, because your customer will be heavily dependent on you for all the services that he buys from you. And at the same time, when you take a look at the revenue part, it's a good chunk of revenue coming your way as a registry, because now it's not just domain names that are contributing to your revenue, it's also other products and services that you sell. Thirdly, I would want to talk about how you can basically promote your TLD through your channel. Registry promotions is a very, very important aspect in terms of marketing your TLD. Now, when it comes to signing up these resellers, these local organizations in your country, what will incentivize them the most is basically you running promotions. Incentivize your resellers, incentivize your partners on the basis of the kind of business they do for you. Right? More the business, lesser the pricing, more is the potential that you would offer them to sell your TLD. Mind you, there is a battle for registrar shelf space. Your registrars have a lot of TLDs to sell out there. But what would basically put your TLD amongst the top 5, among the 100? It is basically incentivizing your registrar to sell your TLD. This could be in lower pricing, this could be in marketing funds, this could be in co-marketing campaigns. But you need to take that one step further and basically incentivize your resellers to make business, to do business for you. Now, since Andrew is here, a proper business case that we could talk about is .ngo. .ngo and ONG, they are a community TLD. They basically have a specific target audience. They need to reach out to these partner organizations who basically will reach out to those NGOs who will buy a .ngo domain name. I guess yesterday in one of the presentations you showed how we're reaching out to these partner organizations, and they are doing exactly that. They have a specific website in place. They are basically passing on the same kind of technology to their partner organizations as well to sell .ngo domain names. Another business case that I remember is .mn for Mongolia. Now, MN in 2005, that is 10 years ago, they had just 2 local registrars, right? 2 local registrars and around 3,000 domain names under management. Now, what they did was later on, they basically implemented this model where they will sign up all these smaller organizations who will reach out to their end customer to sell .mn domain names. They did that. Now, 10 years later, from 2 registrars and 3,000 domain names, they're on 69 local registrars and 16,000 .mn domain names. And at the same time, they've also sold around 4,000 web and email hosting orders. So that switch that they took in taking control of their distribution channel while having existing registrar partnerships proved to be very beneficial for them. On that note, I'd like to end this short marketing snippet.
Great. So thank you, Clifford, and very, very interesting points. Going back to knowing who your target audience is, we've actually worked very, very hard with both PIR and others to try to come up with vignettes that explain who's actually going to purchase, how are they going to use these sites. And I think it's really important to bear in mind, because where we're talking now, it's not necessarily as obvious, especially for people who already have a web presence. Showing them what's different, what's new, and really literally putting yourself in their shoes has been tremendously helpful for us. Rose?
Good afternoon again, everyone. I think I'll just share a few of the strategies that have been deployed in Kenya to enhance the registry in terms of marketing to ensure that we get the reach out there. One of the key things, over and over, you do realize that registrars are your channel. So really empowering that, your channel of distribution, going to the extra mile of understanding what are the challenges that the distribution channels have, which is your registrars. Why aren't they selling this month? What happened to them? The registry now keeps statistics and shares with all the registrars that this is the performance for this month for the different registrars, uploading those who've done extra. Again, recognition through the rewarding of the registrars. For every quarter, the registry will sit down with the registrars and say the most improved registrar in terms of selling and getting the numbers there, and reward them accordingly. The other thing that the Kenya Registry continues to do over and over is partnerships, especially with the other organizations. Case, for example, the Chamber of Commerce, where you have all the businesses that are meeting there and everything and getting those sessions. The Schools Association, the Association of Headmasters, for example, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, working with the educational institutions through the umbrella body, KENET, to ensure that they understand the value of the same. So it's basically in, there's also partnership ongoing with the registrar of companies to ensure that at that particular point we can get awareness. There is conversations going on with the trademark institution, the copyright. That is in terms of brand protection and everything, that when people go to trademark and protect their brand to register the patent and everything, they can associate the domain name with that too and also secure that. So it's partnerships that is working on that. The other thing, of course, is in Kenya, we do realize that over time you have different levels of registrars, and those are your distribution channels. So again, supporting the associations and making them stronger so that they have a similar voice, they have that a forum where they're discussing, they're talking, because you know one thing for sure is their competition, and when you listen to one competitor and you go and listen to the other one, you're going to hear different stories. So the best way is to if they are coming together, to listen to that collective voice and be able to support them. So those are some of the things that have worked. And of course, key to it also is at the end of the day, convenience to the customer via automation, ensuring that that particular, today, Kenik is working on a platform where you can go to their website as a registry and be able to select the registrar that you want and complete the process without necessarily meeting the registrar themselves and everything. So just working on that. And of course, doing joint marketing strategies. For example, the time Safaricom is one of our also big registrars. So the time Safaricom was running the campaigns, Kenik, the registry, supported by giving them reduced prices to meet the marketing cost of what they are going through and that. So when you look at those are some of the things that have worked in terms of marketing strategies. And we're open to hear more that will work going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rose. You mentioned a lot of different associations, and you looked at the IP strain and different people like that. Can you talk about one that you think was particularly successful?
I think one that has particularly been successful was one with the Commission of Revenue Allocation, the the one for the former CBK governor, where then all the counties were able to get the domains and be supported, and they are actually, that domains were actually paid for by the commission. For instead of going individually to the different counties to get the domains, then it was done at a collective level to get the domains for the counties. Okay. Yeah. So, and then also the ones for the schools, where the schools are getting the websites that are bundled together with the domain and yes, and support services. Thank you.
Thank you. It's something that I think we oftentimes, because of the way that the web developed and the way that the sales channel has developed, we relied in the past on channel to do all the marketing. And it was very straightforward because people who wanted a website, they knew where to go. And now I think it's requiring a lot more creativity, a lot more authenticity, a lot more, if you will, shoe leather, being out there in front of different communities and being really pretty clever about ways that you can look at communities. So in our case, in the case of the .ngo community, it's NGO associations, but then there are sometimes our sub-associations aimed at a particular subsector, like health, like women and children's issues, like education. And there are many allies of the sector and many, many different ways that you can reach these different people. So that's fantastic. Now, Bob, you're here representing ICANN, and one of the big questions, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a hard time, so don't be mad. But one of the big questions that comes to me oftentimes is, this is all great, I never heard of it. I didn't know there was a new GTLD program. In fact, I didn't even know how I could get a website. I remember when I first started working on this project, my mom said to me, so .org, you mean somebody runs .org? And so the level of knowledge in the general public, I think it's fair to say, around all of this is relatively low. What has ICANN done to get the word out that these new properties are available? And what is ICANN planning to do, which we know is more, to build up the world's knowledge of this as an opportunity? Good luck.
Thanks, Andrew. That's a big question. I'll attempt to answer. So maybe before I address your question directly, I want to make a few observations and just to give a perspective to where we are coming from and why we think that it is now time for marketing to take a front seat. In Africa, I think for a long time, we have focused on the technical trainings to ensure that our registries, from a CCTLD perspective, are technically sound. And the marketing professionals in the room will tell me that, and will agree with me, that you can only sell a working solution. Imagine you are outside there and selling .ke, for example, and the first client registers and it is not working. This is a problem that is out of your hands. It is in the technical side. So we've concentrated a lot in the technical aspect of our registries. But now we realize that the technical side can be perfect, but that does not add to the numbers unless there's awareness about this product. So yes, we need a working platform. And of course, any client would go for reliability, and that still hinges on the technical platform. So the technical platform is a key ingredient for marketing. It's a tool that the marketing guys arm themselves with. I have security, I have reliability, I have all these things. So the technical team must ensure this. Now, on the other hand, we now have to go out and get the numbers, engage the marketing gear. So, as has been said, I think by the panelists, a number of approaches have been adopted. And I may just give what, as ICANN, we are trying to do. Let me also point out that before the new GTLD program, in Africa alone, we had 54 CCTLDs, already 54 possibilities. So as a potential client, I have 54 chances or choices to make. So that is already competition. Then you add new GTLDs. So you can imagine how many TLDs are out there that is competing with you. And let's recognize at the same time that because of the internet, your competitor is not your next door neighbor. It's global. So competition is global. So what are we doing at ICANN? Having realized the amount of effort that has been done in technical training, we've initiated a marketing training drive. And of course, in the last panel, Diop alluded to the incubation program. Now, what we are trying to do is to get our registrars, of course, starting with a pilot for ICANN accredited registrars in Africa, to have an experience with established registries. So the affiliates of this world. I'm not saying that is the best model, but can we get a feel of what and how they're doing their stuff that is making them that successful? the most profitable company in Kenya today, we could say Safaricom, but their turnover does not even compare to that of affiliates in any particular year. And I'll use this because affiliates is not here, so I'll not use PIR on the spot. But it tells you the potential of the DNS industry. So we are a billion people in Africa, and we always say that our domains are less than 2 million. So I think that shows what the gap is. So what we are doing is can we learn from good practice? I refuse to say best practice. I don't know if there's a best practice. But can we learn from good practice? But even that pilot, we encountered a lot of challenges. Getting visas for our interns, so to speak, to really go to these registries was a very, very big challenge. And therefore, that already is a hindrance. So it might not even work to really look forward to having this type of exchange program. Then we ask ourselves, can we then do an intra-Africa exchange program? Because I think there's already success demonstrated in Africa. From a marketing perspective, how, for example, has .za, if you allow me to use this, how have they done it? And can they volunteer to take some of our registries, our CCTLEs, and take them through a few days of incubation program? And we can partner in making sure that this happens. Because at least by doing this, we'll ensure that we address some of these challenges like visa or insurance fees that are required to send people outside there. I think with the trainings that have been done in Africa, we are not short of expertise within Africa. So I'm also challenging registries in Africa to come forward, volunteer, and we can work on a program to be sending different CCTLDs across within Africa to learn from our registries. This is something that we would really, really want to do in partnership with the CCTLD community. The other one is a center that ICANN has set up in Egypt, of course, also to address specifically the training element in marketing. Many CCTLDs for a long time, and I think we continue to observe the same, do not even have marketing staff. So everybody in the registry is technical. But we need to demonstrate to them that you actually need marketing. And of course, very soon we should go to the next level and tell them that you actually even need legal staff, because we are saying that legislation is also catching up. And registries are increasingly finding themselves to deal with legal issues. So all these people are now supposed to be part of the registry. So we are doing an entrepreneurship center, and of course, some of us in this room have already benefited from the first bunch of that training. And we hope that going forward, we'd want to use these people that we've trained to train the rest in Africa. And of course, as has been said, partnerships. I want to partner with incubators across Africa, tech hubs across Africa, to really, really look at the element of marketing. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks very much, Bob. Now, I'm just going to push back a tiny bit and give you a chance to tell us a little bit more. One of the biggest challenges that I think the public faces is just the public does not know a lot of what's out there. Do you think it's ICANN's role? Is there a way that ICANN can do something that is facing the general public, and is it your sense that that's appropriate, or what are the plans that ICANN has in this regard? Because I know that the vast majority of Kenyans don't know all that's out there right now.
So Andrew is insisting on the first question. Okay. So my role in ICANN is really to spearhead engagement, basically to talk to those of us who are stakeholders in this DNS ecosystem. And of course, it goes beyond this to include other stakeholders like government. But what is ICANN doing specifically to make sure that we understand that this DNS is business? I think it's because of our culture, maybe, if I look at it from that perspective for a start. We go to the internet to search or to use social media. We are a generation of Facebookers, my generation, not you. But we'd want to show that internet is a business. And there's only so much that I can do without really being accused of marketing this particular TLD or this particular TLD. Imagine asking the regulator in Kenya, for example, to market M-Pesa or Airtel Money. It doesn't mean that there's a way that they cannot help in ensuring that these services reach everybody. So ICANN is approaching it from a holistic perspective, just evangelizing about the DNS as a business opportunity. Whether we are reaching everybody, I think not yet there, but at the same time, it can only be done in collaboration with stakeholders in this industry. So we cannot do it alone.
Thank you for making a valiant attempt to answer an impossible question. We recognize that it is very, very difficult to disintegrate or to disaggregate between the individual TLDs, the individual ecosystems, and the broader case of evangelizing on behalf of the internet and on behalf of the new and the existing TLDs. So I recognize that that's a very, very difficult challenge. Now I'm going to open it up to the audience. I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions to try and bring everybody in. And the first question is, we've heard a lot about .ng today over the last couple of days. We've heard a lot about .za. Does anybody have a sense of what are some of the other popular CCTLDs on the continent, and .ke, excuse me, some of the other popular TLDs on the continent, and if they have a brand, what brand is it? Any sense? Are there any TLDs that you can think of that are very well branded on the continent? I'm not seeing any hands. Does anybody know which are the largest? Do I see a hand? Please, jump in.
Okay, first of all, .ng. But there's also quite a other few ones like .br, which actually has a very, very interesting model. You have the .co.uk that we're aware of. But I'll just go back to .ng, which is one that I'm very interested in and very keen. You find that .ng actually operates in a model of being innovative and also empowering the youth. So it does have a brand of its own, and if you were in a country like Nigeria, for instance, you find that it's very strong. People really know about it. But the question that we should ask ourselves, sometimes the question I ask anyway, is there seems to be a low user response in terms of the CCTLDs because people are used to .com. So is there any, I don't know, maybe an out-of-the-box idea of how to improve user response? But back to your question, .ng. Thank you very much.
Are there any other, please?
Excuse me. Hello? Hello, Andrew.
Yes, yes.
I think on the continent we have also Morocco. Unfortunately, they are not here. Somebody can Google them.
Paulos Nyirenda from Malawi. .mw is one, but the point I wanted to raise is different. And I attended the DNS entrepreneurship meeting in Egypt about 2 months ago. And the issue arose, the question arose that surprised most of us. There were quite maybe 2-3 CCTLDs that raised the question, should we be marketing a CCTLD? And it was a controversial issue because they felt that they are running the CCTLD that they have in the way that their community likes it to be run. And they were questioning the right for anyone to tell them to market it. So it's a national policy, it's a national issue. I just wanted to put it on the table that this issue did arise, what right do you have to tell me to market my CCTLD?
So it's an interesting thing to think about as we're talking about. Bob mentioned that there are really already embedded a lot of competition on the continent, right? One of the other questions is, what is the purpose of your CCTLD? What is its identity? What is its stated purpose? Some of them may not wish to grow large, but you still need to have an identity and you still need to have a business plan, right? And you still need to have some sort of an outreach, and I think this is one of the biggest challenges. Now I'm going to ask another question of our assembled tech leaders here, which is, outside of .ngo, which you've just heard about, what are some of the other new GTLDs that you've recently heard about, and what, if anything, do you know about them? And seeing no hands, I'm assuming that the marketing efforts were not very successful. Anyone? Please. Okay. Yes, again.
Okay. I know I'm speaking a lot, but this is my area of interest. That's probably why.
Go for it.
.press. Yes. And the reason why I know about them is because of a lot of the incentives they always do. An example of the incentive they do is whenever they are doing exhibitions, if you go to their booth and you take a selfie, you can win various gadgets. I know the youths of today, everything is all about selfies. So that was a very interesting marketing campaign they did. So .press, which is used by a lot of journalists.
Okay. So .press. Who else has heard of any of the new GTLDs that have come in? There's been a tremendous amount of toing and froing in the internet community. Please.
Perry Alanda from TTM Agency, Nairobi. I've heard of quite a number. There's .club, .party, .agency, .management. So it's a whole plethora of names out there.
And out of those, have you seen any presence in Africa of any of these new names?
Not particularly. I've not encountered an African firm or entity that is actually using any of those names yet.
Okay. And have they, over there in the corner, please.
Yes, one of them is .media. I actually had one of my clients the day before yesterday. He migrated from someone and he bought it. He told me that when he sent an email to the client was like, oh, this guy deals in media. So it is a good response from his side. I think .media, it is something that it's a force to reckon with.
Any other thoughts from the audience about some of the new GTLDs that you might have heard of? To some extent, these are your competitors, right? This is a lot of the stuff that's gumming up the airways, and knowing them is important. But what I'm seeing is they're not showing the flag here in Africa. Is that correct? You've not heard of them. They're not showing up. They're not reaching out to you, right? So what it suggests is there are some big opportunities, and it suggests that being here matters a fair amount, yes? From my panelists, what do you think of all of the furor about the new GTLDs? How do you think it's going to change, or should it change, the approach to marketing with your organizations, your clients?
With the last 1 year or so, we're talking about new GTLD so much. It's just so much. There's only a little that a common man can digest. Even for an internet user, it's too much to even gasp in one read. But I'm sure that new GTLDs, if marketed well, will do a really good job. I actually wanted to answer the question that you asked the audience about what GTLD has caught your attention. .club, for example. .club has done a brilliant job in terms of marketing their TLD to different avenues and to select avenues where they actually thought they basically have their target audience in place. They are at a stage right now where they're just known and they do not have to invest marketing dollars to basically get .club registrations. They've already crossed, I guess, 300,000 .club registrations and they're doing really well. So New GTLDs, yes, if marketed really well, some of them will do really well. .press, for example, is what you mentioned. .website is doing a very good job in terms of marketing that TLD. But on the other hand, TLDs that I do not want to name, who basically who are just there because there was an application round and they just applied, but there's nothing really happening on that front, like giving out TLDs for free. And then when it's up for renewal, you basically face like a double-digit, like a very less renewal rate. That's because you've not marketed the TLD well. We just gave it out for free, and now you have, and now your customers are not really interested because it's a paid domain, as compared to a .club or a .website where customers know the brand first and then buy it and basically want to stick to it because they have a sense of belonging to that specific TLD.
That makes a good bit of sense. Rose?
Okay, I will answer it in two ways. One, from a technology perspective, looking at where we are now with IP, moving to IPv6 from IPv4. I think what happened in that case is where technology was lagging behind demand. And we got to a point where we were at risk and everything, and we started then planning to have the IPv6, and therefore, I mean, in terms of, and even today, you realize getting a dedicated IP address then has become expensive and everything, just because of the limitations of resources. So for me, I look at it as this has been a proactive way to ensure that we don't get to a technology crunch where you're talking about, oh, there's no more variation of .com you can get, therefore what do we then do? So that would be my first answer. The second answer is when you walk into any supermarket, I like using toothpaste as an example. There is all sorts of toothpastes in the supermarkets, and all of them sell. And therefore, there are different people, different preferences and everything. So for me, wearing a registrar hat is more products to sell for me, more variety to offer to the market. Thank you.
So I think that makes good sense. And my sister used to run Crest, so I'm familiar with toothpaste. But I'll ask you the question in a slightly different manner. We've done some work with an NGO in Nepal, and their focus is on oral care. And there was a point in time when in Nepal and in Kenya, they had to develop the market for toothpaste, right? And the consciousness around oral care. And one of the questions that I think a lot of the world is asking is this a great opportunity for Kenyan entrepreneurs? Should your members be making a ton of money on this, a boatload of shillings? And if so, why aren't they? And if they should, what's the timeline? Because one of the biggest challenges that I think a lot of us in this industry face is that it was easy in the past. It was very, very straightforward. There are a very small number of properties out there. You're in the property business, full stop, right? Now, there are a lot of properties. It's a much, much less certain market. So what's, in your mind, working with the registries and registrars, what's the shortest distance to creating appropriate expectations? How are Kenyans going to make a lot of money on this?
Well.
They're setting up their own supermarkets?
I think the quickest way to actually make money out of it, I think most of our registrars have been flooded with technical resources and not marketing resources. And any day, selling is about marketing. It's about awareness out there. And I think we've done that focus of ensuring that, the support, the service is available and everything, and no one knows about it, the way you've just rightfully put it when your mom asks you, so somebody actually owns it. So I think the shortest distance to that is marketing. It's basically equipping the registrars with marketing strategies, with marketing resources, with marketing people. Because at the end of the day, we all, I think we could say more than 50% of the population sends email one way or the other. On a daily basis, the number of emails that are going around means that there's identity online. And there is no way you can send an email without a domain name. So there's all this that is happening. I will give you an example. I have a client who is actually my former professor at the university. I'm an electrical engineering graduate. And my former professor from the university, I bumped into him, and in exchanging my card with him, he asked me, how do I get my email address not to read yahoo.com and to read like yours does? Now, the technical part of me requires that I tell him to get a domain name. What is that? The marketing part of me just told him, all you need to do is give me 4,000 shillings and you will be set up today. And he is a happy customer because all his understanding is I've seen people who work at Safaricom, the email address says that. I've seen people who work at Central Bank, their domain says that. I've seen people who work at IMF. They send me emails and they have IMF on them. How comes mine is on Gmail? And that is how simple it is. And therefore, we need to the conversation. I think that going into marketing is the most important thing. It's just marketing. It's simplifying that conversation. Because if I started with my professor to say, you need to get a domain name and then your emails needs to be hosted, I would have totally lost him. So I think the shortest route, equip ourselves with marketing, marketing, marketing.
Yeah, definitely. I think we talk a lot of technology in the guise of selling domains. And most of the time we don't realize that our clients don't understand what we're talking about. So the same thing that Ross is saying, all that the client wants is a service, just an email. So they don't care whether it takes a domain name to make that happen. I just want to send an email. Now, the problem we've had is this being a very unique field. This is not, for example, training that as a marketer or as somebody doing marketing in college, you'll ever be exposed to. And therefore, it still comes back to how can we now get a pool of properly trained marketing professionals in the DNS industry. We are doing good technically. Of course, we are even now moving to DNSSEC. But this now needs to cross over to marketing. And like I said, the other ecosystem that is quickly catching up with us, that is the legal element of it. But I'll stick to marketing because that is the purpose of this session. So training is still very key, and I think I'll still insist that we really need to join hands to really train DNS industry relevant marketing champions. And this is a challenge to all our registries. To the comment from Malawi, Dr. Paulos, on, of course, the question on why should I market my CCTLD if I don't want to. Well, this is choice. It's a choice. If you really don't want to market your CCTLD, there's nothing we can do about it. But there is increasingly a lot of focus on making CCTLD sustainable and actually growing them. And we also need to demonstrate that CCTLDs have an ecosystem around them. It is because of the registry or the CCTLD that you have resellers, and this is an ecosystem. It is because of this CCTLD that other businesses, such as payment solutions, like we just saw earlier today, is finding a niche and providing a service because of this. So we need to demonstrate that if we could grow the domain industry, then it can potentially lift up a number of subsidiary services or the ecosystem around it. And this has the overall effect of really improving our IGDP, because the other question we get is, so can you demonstrate to me how this thing is turning out to or adding to my GDP as government? So this can be demonstrated, but we really, really have to grow the numbers. Okay.
There is no question. I'm a former World Bank official many years ago, and one of the things that I look back on is the time that we spent helping countries around this region look at their plan 2020 and 2030. And in almost every instance, you're talking about a government plan that has the development of a tech sector as a cornerstone of what they're trying to do. Knowledge workers, think of all the buzzwords, knowledge workers, the ability to work from regional hubs, the ability to avoid more people flooding into the major cities. These are all major priorities. But we have to find a way to make this more appealing and to get more of the dynamic young entrepreneurs in this space as opposed to other spaces. I'm interested in what people think in terms of the question of urgency. When we went to develop the .ngo domain, one of the first things that we did was sit down with members of the community to figure out what was urgent for them. And why urgency? Urgency because the truth of the matter is a lot of people do have an email. A lot of people, maybe even through their work or through some other area, may even have a website that they have access to. So what's urgent about it that's going to cause them? In the case of the .ngo community, what's urgent is visibility and the ability to diversify their sources of finance. So we really tried as best we could to cut to what they most needed, what keeps them up at night. So in terms of people in this room, in the communities that you work with, what is going to be urgent about whether it's a CCTLD or a new GTLD? Where's the big opportunity that's going to tip someone from being interested but inactive to being active? I'd love to hear what people think, and any of the panelists, please jump in.
My name is Maxon from sawasawa.com. I'd like first to echo the sentiments made by Bob in regards to having well-trained marketing representatives in the domain sector. That would really be a good idea. And because if we are actually going to have just marketing people and we give them the marketing tools and the marketing resources, this is not going to do anything. Because I might come out of the college or I might come out of the university and you give me the tools, the resources to go and market. And then I go to Rose and tell Rose, look, Rose, you need a .co.ke. Then Rose will ask me, what for? And why should I get a .co.ke or why should I get a .com? We actually need the knowledge. That is on the marketing side of it. Then, once an engineer said that when you carry along an attachment guide to a site, 3% of the questions will come from the client, 5% of the questions will come from a fellow engineer, and 92% of the questions will come from your attachment guy. Now, look at it this way. I have a domain. I would like to sell it to Andrew. Why? Why should I sell the domain to you, Andrew? That's the first question that I should ask myself. Then, am I selling this domain to you just to sell the domain to make sales, to improve the registry sales, or why? Because actually what I've come to realize about the marketing guys in the domain sector, we are selling the service, but we are not actually offering the client what the client would like to have. What the client would like to have is an after-sale service. Yes, I've given you the domain. What next? Even if we are not going to talk about the technical part of it, the technical part of it will definitely come in after the client has bought the domain. So we should look at it this way. What if we get the 3% questions from the client? Or what if we get the 92% questions from my colleague who I want to sell the domain with? Thank you.
You asked who knows about the new GTLDs, and I'd just like to throw it back when we have a full room to ask among the registrars, the Drake, Sawasawa, and every other player who is selling any of the new GTLDs. Because maybe it starts from the registrars, those big players, so that when I ask, I want a .com, and then you ask me back, what product are you selling or what are you doing? And then I say, I'm selling something. Then why don't you get a .shop? So those are the conversations we need to engage with the end user when you are doing the selling of the domains. So maybe we don't have enough registrars selling the new GTLDs, or just there's a gap where the word reaches the people who know, and then the end user doesn't get the information. And then number two, yesterday we talked about extending the uses of our CCTLDs, like .ng. You can eat the .ng. Then I'm asking myself, then what is the function of the CCTLD? Because if we start playing the extended role of a GTLD, then what does it mean to have a .ke or a .ng at the end? Because I might say it's like putting on a Kenyan shirt online, and then you see so many of .tvs, now it becomes a television, and you don't know why you should be buying .tv for your country. Maybe you should opt for another GTLD.
Thank you very much. Those are two really interesting points. What's your name?
Liz Orembo, Kenya.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. So we've got 2 points that I think are interesting. And again, I'm going to throw this to the panel or to the audience. 2 points. Point number one was, is the question a question of a combination of both supply and demand? That people don't know what's out there. So are there any registrars here who are selling anything besides a CCTLD and COM and org? Yes. Doing media, right?
Yeah. Come for the .shop after the meeting immediately.
So there are a few, but it is probably very much the case that most people don't know, right? And it is a bit of a chicken and an egg. There's no demand, so you might not spend the time to do it. Without doing it, there won't be any demand, right? So it's clear that there's an opportunity if you're more dynamic in reaching out as a .shop or a .ngo, right? So that was question number one. It is interesting, though, it will be interesting to see how many members of yours are going to pick up some of these other extensions, or whether they use this increased interest to push harder into the KE space, right? The second question was about the purpose of a CCTLD, right? And as you know, there are many. .co is an example. .tv you mentioned. I think I mentioned yesterday .me, which is Macedonia, if anyone knows that. So a lot of people have used that as their personal website, right? And
it's Montenegro.
Montenegro. I'm sorry, you're right.
Oh,
Gosh, right. My bad. The and I met them too. I know them. So the point is it a bad idea for Nigeria to sell bi.ng to Microsoft, right? I can't imagine how it is a bad idea, but it does change what people think about the CCTLDs. So, Rose, you were going to jump in, please.
No, I was just going to answer from a point of registrar. Based on the automation that is there, now I sell all the domains. I'm just seeing an email that now I'm even selling .nagoya and .gold. So I don't even know what they are, but yeah, they are available. We are selling them.
Yeah, so we are a registrar as well. Logicboxes is a registrar, and we have an integration with a lot of TLDs, but we're not based in Africa. We based in the US and India. And we see a lot of interest, which is why we keep integrating a lot of TLDs on a daily basis. In fact, right now we have more than 400 TLDs integrated. Now, speaking of the interest that new GTLDs have, I think registrars cater their integrations depending on the kind of interest or kind of demand that they have from their customers. I don't see that being the case in Africa for now. As a registrar, do you see a lot of demands from customers for new GTLDs? Not exactly. As compared to Europe, where they are pretty high on new GTLD right now. A good thing for Africa is CCTLDs are not really hampered by the arrival of new GTLDs. It might be in the future, but right now you still have a majority of the market share for CCTLDs. So it's basically on a very demand basis that I think new GTLDs would prevail, if that answers.
Sure. And let's talk for a second about price, because it's come up a number of times. Someone mentioned the Greek financial crisis. I thought that was pretty interesting. So how price sensitive are you in the audience? If you see a good property that you think represents you, is an increase of $5 in its annual price significant for you? Is $10? What's the most you've ever paid for a domain name without being really unhappy? Can people give us some examples?
I've paid $14 for a .kitchen, which I was not happy about. Please do not ask me why I bought a .kitchen domain name.
What's the most you've ever paid for a national or an international, for a GTLD or a CCTLD?
Okay, it's now on. I had a customer who wanted to buy .et, and when they had the price, they cancelled. They couldn't buy it because it was about $350.
That's a CCTLD?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, for Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's interesting. What we've found around the world as we've been looking at these different opportunities. Please, go back.
Yes, I once paid $18.95 for a .org renewal, which I was totally disappointed about. Right now, GoDaddy is asking for $15 to renew .coms. So we are transferring a lot of domains from there once they reach renewal dates to cheaper registrars.
Pretty price sensitive, right?
When they asked us for a reason why we're doing so, we told them $15 .coms are not sustainable on a large scale.
Anyone else, please? Maxim.
Thank you. I've also bought a .kitchen for $14. But once again, let me put something across. When it comes to business-wise, we don't look at the price. Because if you sell the domain at $14 and your close competitor will sell it at $13, does it mean you will now have to decrease the price to $12? You know, the price at times can become sensitive. But what we should look at it, we should not look about the price. What am I offering you after this? Yes. Because the price is sensitive, but what if your competitor takes it down to $1? Are you going to take it to zero? You'll be making a loss, definitely. That's according to business. Talking in business ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Max, and I think it's a good point. You may have heard, maybe not, of two of the very famous examples in this space right now. One of them is .xyz, and the other one is .berlin. Both of these were offered with an interesting business model where they were offered to the public for free in the first year with the hope that people would renew them. Maybe 10% would renew, but the renewal would make a good business. And what have we seen with .berlin? Last month, from what I was told, there were 47,000 givebacks, which is to say that people who were offered this good for free basically said, thank you very much. I don't necessarily see that this has changed my life in any way. I'm not planning to use it, so rather than renew it, even at a low price, I'm going to give it back. It would suggest to me that really what we're talking about is not price but value. If you have a name that really works for you, a name that speaks to who you are, the community that you're in, the business that you're in, the thing that you're trying to accomplish, it very much behooves you to get that name. And if the price is less than the cost of a taxi to the airport, you're probably in a pretty good space. If it's $300, maybe not, but even then, there are some names that are well worth the money. But what we're seeing is a movement away from trying to get something for the lowest possible price and a focus on what is of real value. Where is the community that I am a part of that I want to put my flag in? And we're seeing this also on the national level.
So, Andrew, just to follow up on these free offers, I think it's also important to note that we have CCTLDs in Africa that are actually free. And it's an interesting business model, and I'm sure Clifford here would want to comment on that. But I'll give you, for example, from the perspective of Botswana. The CCTLD is under the regulator, but then they don't charge registrars. But then registrars ultimately charge registrants, and it's not cheap. So the question is how it really doesn't make a lot of sense when you get it for free and charge so much for it. So an interesting scenario. But I think it is also important to really work with the registrars or resellers as the distribution channel. You see, when I come to buy a name, for example, most of the time I really don't understand what the difference is, and maybe I don't need to understand. I think, and of course I'm being selfish about this, from a CCTLD perspective, from .ke, for example, I would urge our registrars to recommend that this is the difference between these TLDs. I'm not sure that is happening today. Maybe Rose would want to comment whether that is happening. But I think it is one way of really intentionally driving a specific brand if you really want to go direction, because it is competition. So I think, yes, price, it's debatable because you and me knows that there are TLDs or domains that have been bought for example, wine.com, if you remember how much it was bought for. So what is in the name? It boils down to what you're saying as value. So yes, you can give it for free. It can be so expensive. But if there's value in it, somebody will put money in it.
Well, I think that's very, very, very well spoken. Now, as in theory at least, we are leaving in buses for, please, before we go.
Okay. First of all, I think what we should actually look at is probably is giving a free domain counterproductive, because at times you find that having a price shift can actually be counterproductive. And I think where price war should start should always be when that product becomes an essential that you can't do without, like a toothpaste, which was an example Rose gave. You can't do without a toothpaste. So that is where price shifts and price war starts to come into perspective. Now, I would also like to say that the strategies we should probably use is what I call a push-pull strategy. Now, a push-pull strategy is when you push your product so much that the customers begin to pull the products. I give an example of Procter & Gamble when they initially came to Africa. Now, if you remember back in those days, I think some African women will remember, back in those days, the women used to use cloth. And after their monthly period, they washed the cloth. Now, when Procter & Gamble came with the product, they didn't see the need for the product. There were so much, health issues and the rest of them. And what Procter & Gamble had to do was that they had to push the product till it became an essential and people began to pull the product. And that is what we need to start looking at. How can we create a value add? There has to be a value add attached to it. So if we say we're giving the domain for free, people don't see the value in it. But when there is a price tag to it, they start to see the value. And then you push the product so much that the people start to pull the product because they believe without a website, without a domain name, they can't function. If I operate as a bank, for instance, and I'm sending my email address at yahoo.com, it makes me look very unserious and dubious. Now you have created a pull effect because it is essential for them to have a domain name with their company name. So we have to first of all start looking at how can we push the product to the extent that the customers begin to think and feel and know that it's essential. Then the price war can come into perspective. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you. That's a very, very interesting comments. And it is also important to know your market, because the product you mentioned, no amount of marketing is going to make that helpful to me, right? So now, in the interest of not, you really do need to know your market, right? And this is important. I think we've tried to do a lot of this in a kind of a general sales way. And what we're finding is with the greater level of competition and the greater level of segmentation, there are new opportunities, but you also really need to be on your game, because selling to the world and not to your community is just a lot harder now because the world is a lot bigger and there are a lot more noises in it and a lot more voices in it. So as I was saying just a second ago, I know we have dinner this evening. Mary.
No, he's another person.
Shehu.
Please.
Yeah, it's Shehu. Okay. Yeah, the last speaker talked about toothpaste. I think you can do that toothpaste. You can do that toothpaste. Before toothpaste came,
I'm hoping your breath does not reflect this in any way.
But let me tell you where I'm going to. I think the right word there is we should now learn how to create demand. That is the right word. You know, where those guys who are using chewing stick in the olden days, they could do without toothpaste. But